This is big. Hello everyone and welcome to a new episode with me, Samer Haddad, your host of this show. Today, I'm bringing you something really big. It is the one automation you need to get your dream job. But let me start with this. This is not an easy automation. This is an intermediate to an advanced level type of automation. Still, it is something that I'm gonna give you A to Z. So if you look into the description, you're gonna find a link to a Google document file that has all the details given for free to you. Two of those automations, I will be able to give you the template, and two others I will not, because they contain code by Zapier steps, which in that case, Zapier doesn't allow you to share as a template, but I'm gonna, part of that document, give you the code to build those steps for yourself. So in a nutshell, you're gonna get everything you need to build this automation in the Google document I share with you. The only thing you need to do is give me your uninterrupted attention, where we can go and I show you the step by step in building this and how it works, so you can do it for yourself, you can run it, and you can go after your dream job. And what I hope for out of this is soon or in the future, one of you will write me a comment in the comment section telling me that this automation got them their dream job that they've always been after. And with this, do not forget to hit that subscribe button, and later on decide for yourself if you want to like it and share it with others if you see value. And let's get started. Okay, before I go into the automation, I want to show you how it works, so you can imagine that as an end result, and then we go to the automation step by step. So this automation is actually made out of 4 zaps, so basically 4 automations to achieve the results. And on the screen, you can see LinkedIn. So this is the weird social media platform most of us are on, where people either brag, talk about their new job, or LinkedIn keeps going after you to subscribe, and most of us do not. And I'm mentioning that for a reason, because there's little cost associated with this automation. For me, it's worthwhile the money if you are looking for that next big move, and it's definitely much cheaper and much more valuable than subscribing to LinkedIn, which is made to find new jobs, and most people never find a job over LinkedIn. So what most of us do on day-to-day basis, if you're looking for a job, you either go and add people in companies that could potentially be the employer that you're looking for. So you look for HR people randomly, you try to add them, they either reject or accept, you try to send messages randomly, it works or doesn't work, or you simply go to the jobs tab and start looking through things related to your work or not, and you have to go and read them through as a description, who's the employer, try to understand everything about them, and then decide for yourself if this is really fits what you aspire towards, and then decide to apply or not. And each time, for each application you have to do it, you will have to actually go to the link and do these things. This will remain, and that's fine. But what I will help you do is go after these things in laser focus, and rather than doing the search, you only go for the specific jobs that you have very high odds in really landing. So hopefully this automation will give you one more thing, which is peace of mind, and you will never need again to go to this jobs tab and go through all of these unrelated jobs that you have to go through to make sure that you're not missing out and there's not something in the middle of hundreds of jobs not related to your experience or your aspiration, and then find the one that really matters, which probably you'll end up losing if you're not really clear with how to build that CV for that post and who to actually connect with and message on LinkedIn for that job. And to solve all of this, I'm here to help. So let me show you how it looks in terms of data that you end up with when this automation runs. Again, this will help you to imagine how that automation works and build it for yourself or someone else. So if we go to Airtable, this is one of the phases of that automation generates. This is basically a database with lots of jobs we've picked up from LinkedIn mostly, but other sources as well. And all of it is here. And you can see there's a huge range of information that is really useful, and we don't want to go through, we want AI to go through this. And you can find things like company specialties, company overview, the size of the company, where's the headquarters located, the location of that job itself, the provider, is it LinkedIn or something else like Glassdoor, and then the job provider URL. So if you go and click on that link, it will take you to that job post, then other things. And one of the most important, which later will come in, which jobs to ignore and which jobs to apply for. And then we jump to the next one, which is much simpler, cleaner. And these are the jobs that we need to go after at laser focus. And what makes this one special, and I don't think anyone out there did what I've done here, is that you find simply the job, the location, the URL to apply for, the company ID, the employer, and you have the optimized CV. Yes, optimized CV. So the CV you find here is not your standard CV. It's a CV modified for this role based on your experience and your own CV as it is today, and it is made ready for you in this area here on Airtable, where you can simply double click, look at it. So this is my modified CV, and use it. So you can send it to people, you can use it to apply for that job. You have the URL ready for you here, so you can just click at it and apply, and you have a detailed CV that is modified with the keywords that people are looking for through their systems to shortlist those applications. And hopefully this will get you to be shortlisted. And then what you will get out of this, if on LinkedIn there's a hiring team, you'll get their information on this database. Even if there's no hiring team, this automation will go to that company, look for HR people, executives within the region where you're applying. People are high within that organization, get their names, their details for you, at least their profile URLs, and throw everything for you here. And by this stage, you have an optimized CV, you know the job link, you know who's behind it, the top HR people for that job here, the HR search result. And what you only need to do is go to their profiles and send them a message with your optimized CV around this job. And even it will give you some tips based on its understanding of the organization, the job you're applying for, and the people you are approaching. So you can see the tips here, you can read them based on the job. And hopefully every time you run this automation, you will only come to these 2-3 jobs that achieve everything for you that you're looking for your next role, and apply for those and only those. And with this, let's start building. Now, the first thing I need you to do out of this video, straight off the video, is create 2 tables. One is the job search table, and one, call it whatever you want, but I called it the optimized CV table. And hey, by the way, I'll put again in the same document those fields that you need in each table, so you can replicate the table on your own. So do not worry about reading the fields here on the screen. So just know that you need those 2 tables to be created, the job search table and then the optimized CV table created. I will list for you the field type and then the field name. The name and the type is very important, the name is not, so put whatever name that suits you. Just you need to do them so you can actually use them later on in your integration on Zapier. Okay, now we're ready and we'll go to Zapier and I'll take you through the Zaps again. I'll go in a very structured but fast manner, and you will have everything in the Google Doc ready for you to replicate the same. So you need not worry about that, just focus on the logic and what I'm trying to achieve so you can build it being aware and understanding of how this thing works. Okay, so now let's start building our first part of this automation. So there's essentially one part is to search for jobs, which is made out of 2 automations. One of them is what you see on the screen, which is a very simple endpoint through Rapid API, and they'll show you the details on Rapid API for this endpoint. And the other one, which I decided to take it as paid from Rapid API, one endpoint that only looks through LinkedIn, which uncovers an amazing amount of details which make this automation 10 times more powerful. And I will spend more time on that automation. but I'll cover this at a high level so you're aware. So this is one part, searching for the job. The second part is searching for the HR people in these companies that we are qualifying their jobs and deciding on which ones to go after. And the last one is optimizing your CV. We take all of that intelligence, all of that details that we uncovered or collected, and we crunch it through AI, through an assistant, OpenAI assistant, and we create an optimized CV, and we actually develop the actual PDF as I showed you already. Now, I will show you on the Rapid API site how things work. I'll show you one example. Everything else works the same way across everything we do, at least in this video. And once you understand how it works, how you need to get the URL of that endpoint, and later on you understand what I mean by the URL, you can apply that across everything. And in the document I will give you, it will include all the different API endpoint calls we need to make to achieve this automation with all the details. So you simply go there, copy paste, and include the dynamic fields, and you're done. You don't even need to go to back and forth to Rapid API. The only thing you need to do in Rapid API is one thing, is go to these endpoints that you decide to go after or use and subscribe to them so you can have access to them. Okay, so the search in theory can be a weekly or a monthly thing. This automation, you have to understand, it's a little bit task heavy. So for me, I'll search when I need to search for a job. So I made it something to be triggered through the Zapier Chrome extension. If you don't know about the Zapier Chrome extension, if you click on this extension here, you can download it from the extension store, and you will get all the details of Zapier, your Zapier, and any Zap that you have that is triggered by that extension, you will see here. So here you can see the two different Zaps I have to search for jobs, the LinkedIn focused one and the job search. You can see weekly, I put it first to be weekly and then I change it to be through the Zapier extension. And if I click send on any of them, that will trigger the automation and the whole thing will start running, searching for jobs, optimizing, doing everything I planned here. Okay, so the first step is this webhook request. This is basically where I make the API call to the endpoint in Rapid API, the generic free one that gets me 10 jobs based on a criteria I define on Rapid API side. And why I need to define it there, because I am not doing this through parameters. I'm doing this through the URL itself. So if you look at the details of it, you have a very long URL without any dynamic fields because I'm looking for a specific search. It's a GET request. I have the needed headers as per that endpoint or that API offered on Rapid API. The top two are standard accept application JSON and content type application JSON. And the last two are the one consistent across all API calls we're going to use. This is the Rapid API key and the host. And this is all readily information available on Rapid API, so you don't need to even worry about how you get it. I will give you each area what to put, but you need to get your key and your host directly from Rapid API. Just create a free account. It's free. Some APIs are paid, some are not. As I told you, I have decided for the LinkedIn one to use the paid version of that API and not limit myself to the free version of it. The second one, I kept it free. Why did I pay $5 a month to get a really huge bandwidth of using that API? And it's so many endpoints. Number one, it's LinkedIn. And this API has so many endpoints to uncover so many information about people, companies, jobs, leads, whatever you think. So today I'm automating for finding a job. Tomorrow I can use the same API, paying only $5 a month to get leads for a company or whatever that comes to my mind. You can do a lot with that. If the information is on LinkedIn, odds are you can get it from that API. Now, let me show you the API, the simple free one. And whatever I do here is applicable even for the second one. I'm not going to spend all my time on Rapid API. I want to focus on the automation. So this is the API I'm talking about. It's called Jobs API. It's very simple. It has two endpoints. This is why it's limited. If you click on it, you'll go to its page. You can see it has multiple tiers. One of them is current, which is free. One of them is pro for $10. The difference between paid and free here is that it will give you more credit to get more results. That's it. Not more information. The endpoints are very clear here, and we have two of them. Okay, we have others for salary range, which is scarce information that you don't find in most cases. So let's start by the job search, because this is the one we're going to use. I want to search for jobs. So I click at this, and the first thing you can get here is the API key that you will use later on. Now, forget about this part of Rapid API and focus always on this part. This shows you the curl or HTTP way of submitting your API call. You can see here you have the method, it's get, you have the URL, and then you have the headers. Those are things you need to take to Zapier or Postman or whatever platform you're using for this. I will include all of that in the document. I'll keep repeating that so you don't worry if you are not an expert in APIs. Now, what's important for you to understand is the parameters tab here. So parameters tab here is basically what kind of search you want to do. So you'll have to build it here, and all is reflected in the URL. So that's why, as I showed you, the URL is only text. I don't have dynamic fields because I built my search into this. So for example, query here, it's as a standard web developer, I can put it, for my case, procurement. So it will get me 10 jobs on procurement. The other thing is location. So these are the two required parameters. The title, basically, or the query, they call it query, but the title of the job search, and then the location of the job search. Other things are optionals. You can look through them if some of them might help you get better results or more focused results, because this can get task heavy. If you decide to go with the paid tier of this API, then you can have more focused kind of requests. And for example, you can have 3 or 4 different APIs, one for, in my case, procurement vice president, procurement director, procurement in pharmaceuticals, whatever you want, just to have these like kind of laser focused search terms and replicate it, but it will work. Eventually, the automation, you have to tweak it a little bit, but it will work in the same way, where you take all those information and populate it in our database that I showed you on Airtable. But you need to build this here, and then eventually, whatever you change here, it will reflect in the URL you see on the right. So let me put here procurement. And now if you look here, you can see procurement is already in the URL, the location in the United States. I can put, for example, UAE, that is here. Now, what I recommend, depending on the API, so this is a very generic API, you can put a generic name and it might work. When you go to LinkedIn or other APIs for that matter, they will give you a description under each parameter, what that means and how to fill it. So be careful. So in some cases, I cannot just put UAE. In my case, I have to put the United Arab Emirates, right? In some cases, I can't put Dubai even. I have to put DXB. So just be aware of those things and read around the parameters that you are modifying. But this one is straightforward. Once you have it, you have the headers. You can see here the host. You have to copy it from here. It's a small URL-like text. And then you have your key. Your key will be automatically generated once you subscribe. Be careful when you pick them up. Do not pick up with the asterisk here at the end, or the inverted, especially for the URL, the inverted backslash. You just take the URL starting from H of HTTPS until the end before this inverted backslash. And then for the host, you just take everything before the comma here, and the same goes for the API key. Okay. We go back to Zapier and we list everything here, and then we can hit continue and test it. Once you test it, you will get it in an itemized manner. So you'll get 10 jobs with their items populated for you as a result of this. Once we have that, we can create a loop using Loop by Zapier. And here, when you build Loop by Zapier, you need to build it based on the outcomes you're getting from the API call. You don't need to list everything, list what matters to you. For example, for me, from the response of that API call, I'm taking title, company description, providers, providers URL, location, salary range. You can see in most cases it's not there, and then job ID. Now, you can see things here are comma separated because Loop by Zapier will take those items and will create objects out of them to loop through. And then trim white space true, and the other things are standard. I didn't change a thing here. Then test the loop. Once you test the loop, you'll have loop-based items. And what I've done here, and this is the most important AI step across this automation is qualifying that job. So let me show you. So this is a standard conversation with ChatGPT. If you go to the configuration, I have a prompt here, and I will share the prompt with you later on in the document, so don't worry about it. But essentially what I'm telling it, hey, my name is Samer, this is what I do, this is my aspiration, I would like to be in this type of company, in this location, whatever you want to define about your targets and goals in finding a job. And then at the end, you ask it to do one thing. Give me back one of two, either apply or ignore the job and nothing else. And what this automation will do, when it starts populating those records in the first job search Airtable database I showed you, it will scan each job with all the details and start telling you ignore, ignore, apply, ignore. If it's apply, something else will happen later on. If it's ignore, it will die there and then. So with this, you do not need to do that online search. It's doing it for you. It's looking for what you are probably looking after, and it will just highlight for you, hey, by the way, these are the ones to go after. Forget about everything else. So imagine how much time saving this is and how much super and laser focused this approach is in this automation. So once it does that, it will populate that table with all the information, including the ignore or apply for each job. Okay, so this is the first one. Let's move to the second one, which is the LinkedIn focus. Again, this starts with the Zapier Chrome extension. You can just hit start. It will run this. Very similar. So I maybe will cover a couple of them here. In this automation, I do not need to go into every one of them, but the same thing, you have to go to Rapid API, open that API, and then look at the endpoints, use the ones I recommend here, and I will include their URLs in the document. But essentially, it's the same thing when it comes to Rapid API. So let me open this here, center front. So you can see here the same way, it's a GET request. I got basically a URL out of Rapid API for, this is the second API. And then I have my key and my host, and that's it. Now, this is important because this is a very, maybe I'm marketing it. I have no affiliation with this API. I just subscribe to it because it's super powerful. As I mentioned, today I'm using it for job search. In the future, it could be business leads that I can do ad campaigns based on, and I have maybe laser focused communication going to influential people based on such automation. So that's something for a future project that I need to work on. But essentially, you can see the difference between the previous one and this one. This only the profile APIs, you can see how many endpoints. Each endpoint will have its own logic to get you so many different responses and details about different things on LinkedIn. So you have contact API, you have employee search, and then you have company search. So see how much company details you can get. Then jobs API, so all of that around searching jobs, post, location, and even system, which I didn't use. But there's so many things you can get out of this API. And I've decided to choose the first paid tier, which is $5 a month. And honestly, that is nothing compared to subscribing to LinkedIn, which we all go for to find a job, and most of the time we fail to do so. So I'll be glad to pay these guys who did this thing $5. And even if you put the Zapier whole subscription on top of this $5, you are still doing this automation cheaper than subscribing to LinkedIn. Just putting that out there. So if you decide to go all in, if you want to do this and you don't have Zapier, you want to learn it, you can get an amazing tool to do so many things. One of them is this automation, and search for your dream job, all cheaper than the LinkedIn subscription. This is like a very important point of this automation, okay? But the same thing goes. You have to select an endpoint. So for example, here, let's go for jobs API. So search jobs, and there's a version 2 of it. So let's go with a newer version. You have the details here. You have the same kind of build up here for URL and headers. You go to the parameters. So you put in the keyword, location ID, and then other details that are important. As I mentioned before, here they're telling you after each of them what options you can select. If you put something from your own mind, it will not work. For example, the date posted, you cannot just say last week and with spaces. This is the way it's done here. They're telling you, you either put any time, past month, past week, and past 24 hours. And assume this is case sensitive when you do it. So write it in the same way they put it. And you have so many details you can put here to get maybe a more optimized output to what you're looking for. So once you modify this, so the keyword is the job search keyword. Let me again put procurement, and you can see here it automatically changed. So you can see here procurement. Okay. So all you need is take this URL and take it to the automation and continue building there. Okay. So let's click this one. Again, it's a custom webhook. We go to the configuration, it's a GET request, and this is the URL I got when I did my parameters in my way. And then you have the key and the host. Again, those are readily available on the right panel on Rapid API that shows the curl or the HTTP version of that API call. Okay, so you have those, you run them, you're going to get LinkedIn job results with so many parameters and pieces of information. Now I made this like super powerful. This is the one automation I wanted to do for anyone to find a job, and I did it this way. Now all the details I'm telling you this endpoint gets you, it will not come just by this one API call because it packs so many information. What this API call will do, it will get you a list of job IDs and that's it. So you'll find just a bunch of string of numbers and nothing more. So what we will do here is we'll create a loop by Zapier, and in that loop you need only one thing to be defined. The value is a job ID, you can call it whatever you want, and then the output, the data ID, what is called the data ID out of that previous API call. After that, we create a loop that will go over those IDs one by one, and you have to test the loop so you can get them in the loop version of the item. And then we have to use another endpoint, actually a couple of them, but the first one is an endpoint that will get you job details. And the only thing you need to give this API endpoint is the job ID. And the job ID is already provided in the first API call, and you can get it here in its loop version. So what this will do, for each job ID it gets, it will go in, get the job details, and you'll get a lot. And it will use the standard URL, plug in the job ID at the end using your headers of API key and the host, and then it will get you job by job all the details, and I'm talking all the details. Okay, so you run it. If you're curious, if we go back here and we look at the job API, so this is the get job details endpoint. You go here, if you go to parameters, there's only a job ID parameter, that's it, and you can pick up the details from here. So let's go back. Okay, so we get the job details with all its glory, with all its detail. One more thing I want to do. So I want to look for the hiring team. This is a different API. So if you know in LinkedIn, sometimes if you open a job, they will mention the hiring team. So some companies decide to link the profile of the person or persons linked to that job so you can contact them if you wish. So that's something, a detail you can get from a different API for the same API on Rapid API, saying API a lot, but basically you can see it here in the jobs API section, get hiring team. You click on it and you look at the parameters. You need the job ID, that's it. And both by the way are optional. So you just, I think need a job. I don't think it will work without a job ID. So let's go back, and if we click on it, this is the hiring team. So we go to the configuration. You simply have to include the job ID for some reason twice, but just, you know, I took whatever was there in the right panel on Rapid API and I followed it. So again, if I go for a second here, you can see that if you see this number here, let's put it something we can easily notice, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Sometimes this is a good tip to see what you need to change. If you go back to the URL, you can see it here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, mentioned once. So this is one dynamic field where I need to put my job ID. And then is it mentioned somewhere else? Well, actually it's not. So maybe it's working for me, but maybe I put an extra part, which is an optional field. So let's go back. So I will not mess with it, but basically I think you can do it until this point here with no issues. Just put actually, yes, the URL is here if you want to search for a specific job URL, and I don't work with that. So let me do it actually in front of you. I'll just delete this part. I have a job ID now. I have everything else in place. So URL and job ID, I hit continue. Let me test it just for the sake of checking it and showing you. So I do a retest. I don't know if I'll get a result because there was a dummy job ID here, and it worked. So you can see it's true and success, and it's blank. Not every job has the hiring team, but it's worthwhile the attempt to search for it. So that means this job ID is valid. And this is something, from the previous time when I was testing this, which is good. And it's blank because that job that the company posted didn't have a hiring team, and that's fine. Now we go to it's the same step with more details. Let me show you. It's a conversation with ChatGPT with details on me and more details about the job that will look through them and decide if it's something to ignore or apply. I will put this prompt in the document for you so you can copy paste. I will remove the part which is unique for me. You have to put what matters for you when you search. And you can see I put the title, description of the job, required skills, and industries. So imagine how solid is that as an input for an AI model that will help you decide if you apply or ignore for this. And then we go to the Airtable record by record created with all the information of hiring team, the job details, and everything else we have. And that will populate the table I showed you at the beginning of the job search results and the database. And with that, we have all these jobs qualified and ready for us for the next step. So with this, let me close this automation and let's go to the next one. Okay, so now let's go for the second main part of the automation. So we search for all the jobs, we have them in a database, we have them qualified. Now we want to start building the optimized CVs and get more intelligence for the ones that AI deems as something we need to apply for. So this one is triggered by each record created in the first table, the job search table. But don't worry, every time it triggers, we go into a filter. And that filter will do something simple. It will look for the field with the AI qualify, as I named it. All the details will be in the document for naming. And then if it's an exact match as apply, it will continue. If it's not anything else, it will stop. So if there's 100 jobs and only 5 of them apply, these 5 will go through. 95, the rest 95 will be stopped before starting. So you'll not have any issues there. Okay. The first step is a ChatGPT assistant step. Now, this is an interesting part. So I created an OpenAI assistant and I fed that assistant with my different versions of my resume or CV. And I created a prompt that I will share in the document for you to give it instructions to review all the details of the job I'm looking at, that given job that I have deemed as apply now, and then look at what it has in terms of my CV, my resume, my information, try to figure out what are the keywords in that job description, the skills and other pieces of information, and redesign the job for me in terms of my CV, right? So it will rewrite my CV in a way that fits this job, in a way that will not basically be lying to the recruiter, but at the same time, it will help me pass through these applicant tracking system, the ATS, on the technology that many of these employers use. So my CV gets shortlisted. Now I will show you quickly how I set it up. I will give you the prompt ready so you don't need to worry about it. Now, one aspect in that prompt is very crucial, is how do I get back those responses? Because I have so many fields on my CV that I need to populate, right? So I have my first job, let's say title, the duration, the description for that job, maybe some references for that job, whatever the way you decide to design your CV in, and I'll show you how it works in detail now. You have to really understand that structure and build a JSON format that you prompt that assistant to respond in. So let me go to the assistant and then let me show you ahead of time the CV template I created so this automation can build my CV for me. So if we go to OpenAI assistant, you can see my assistant here. And I enabled file search and code interpreter. The reason I activated code interpreter because I'm asking it to respond in JSON, so it will make the output higher quality. I don't know it works this way or not. If you know better, write me a comment in the comment section, but I thought this could make it better. Now, OpenAI rolled out the option and the ability to get responses in JSON. You can see it here, response format. If you click on it, you can get JSON. Now, I'm not getting any option. Why? Because I have activated the file retrieval functionality in my assistant. And this is like, if you want to get perfect results, you can do the same prompt, clear out this function search or file search kind of functionality, paste your resume into the prompt itself, and then you're good to go. I had to give it multiple versions of my CV. I want it to be really dynamic in its responses. So I spent more effort on the prompt to get specific responses. So let me show you the prompt. Beyond this, there's nothing else to do here. Beyond activating the file function and the code interpreter, adding the file, so you can just drop the files here. And if you click at the vector store, you can see all the files, which are all my different versions of my CVs, all in one place. And one of them I added here is the template. And I'll tell you why. If you follow my approach, you need to put the template. So the assistant will see how the template is built, where the placeholders are, and then it has everything else to start building that JSON format. Let's go to the prompt. Again, everything will be provided in the doc. I will link into the description. You can see it's a very detailed prompt that talks about, how it should go about reviewing the job description and then deciding on how to reword things for my CV. And I'm giving instruction on, you should be honest, you shouldn't fabricate anything which is not true, but you can modify the wording to help increase my odds, yada, yada, yada. It's just something I spent some time to develop as a prompt. I'm mentioning my CVs here, so I'm going to keep that in the one I share with you, so you can replace it with your own file names that you include in the assistant. But at the end, this is the important part. I'm having this part here where I'm telling it, this is how you format the response in JSON format, and I give it the structure. Now, this looks complex, and I get it. The way you do this is you create your template, your own template. I'll show you my template. You build your own template based on your CV. So you get the most recent CV that you're happy with, and you remove sections and you replace them by placeholders. I'll show you how you do these placeholders in the templates. And then you take all of that information, feed it to ChatGPT or Claude or whatever AI you're using, and explain what you're trying to achieve. Tell it that I'm building an automation that will populate CV for me. I need the response to come from an AI assistant in a JSON format. This is my template. You can attach it if that AI you're using allows attachment like ChatGPT or Claude, and ask it to create that kind of JSON format for you that you include in your prompt. It will give you that JSON format. Just take it, include it in the assistant prompt that I will include in the document, and that's it. Now, there might be some trial and error. If you're not happy with the results, just go with the other idea I mentioned, where you don't include attachments, you don't have file search functionality enabled in the OpenAI assistant. You just simply activate the JSON response and copy paste your resume, your most detailed resume, into the prompt itself. This way, you will get always responses in a JSON format. I think this works as well as fine. And you try both ways and decide for yourself. I did the same process. I went to Claude. In my case, I gave it my template CV and explained what I'm trying to achieve, and it gave me every single detail of this JSON format. And it starts with the bracket here and it ends with a bracket down there. And this is why I know I get responses in a very structured manner. Now, let me show you my CV template here. So you go to this CV template, and I know it looks confusing, but beyond the header where you have your picture and some information, everything else in this template is a placeholder. Let me make it bigger. Okay, so by the way, placeholders on a template are normal text. It is simply two sets of curly brackets, and whatever text between them is the placeholder. For example, I have my professional summary header that I want every time AI to reinvent it and include it in this CV. So I put two curly brackets, I give it a name, and that name, this is why this template is important to build your JSON structure. I give it professional summary dot header and then two curly brackets. This is identified now in Google Documents as a placeholder. So I can later on in my automation interact with Google Docs in creating this. And you can go about any other section in your resume or CV. So I have professional summary main, professional summary, AI focus. So here I talk about more my technology awareness and expertise, and then professional experience, early experience, accomplishments, education, digital presence header, and other things. So build it in the way you want. Make sure that whatever you think should be modified based on a specific job for you, you can do research on it, but you can just decide for yourself. Create a placeholder, write it, like literally write it, give it a name, and then feed that to the AI, ask it for that JSON structure with some context. So you have to explain that you're creating this to get this output of that assistant, and you're good to go. So we build the assistant, we create the template, and then we continue into our automation. So we have everything ready now. And as we've said, anything that is created out of the search part triggers this automation. If it has apply, it will carry on. If anything else, it will stop. So let's assume it's an apply. It will go to a conversation with an assistant. You can see that that's standard on Zapier ChatGPT application. We go to configuration, and it's a very simple prompt. Why? Because we already did the heavy lifting on the assistant side. So provide optimized CV fields as per JSON structure for the below job posting details. And I included the title, description, skills, job industry. And remember, this is triggered by each line that is created on the job search. So once that trigger starts, all these information will come back from the trigger. So you can just select that dynamic field for that specific job from the trigger. And then you select the assistant, and that's it. And once it runs, it will give you, I don't know if my last test gave the data out. And yes, you can, no, this is the instructions. What is the output? Yep. So you can see here, the output is some text from ChatGPT, and then you have a JSON format of all the fields. So this is my response. So I got what I wanted out of ChatGPT assistant that I created. Now I added one more step, because if you've noticed, first of all, this comes back as, I know it's JSON, but it's text, and there's some text before it and after it. So I used the super powerful feature on Zapier, which is Code by Zapier. I created a Python code that, again, the code itself will be there, so you don't need to worry about it. So basically you have to create the input, and you give it a name, a specific name. Just to use my code, just use the name I've put in here, and then include the output of the assistant call in the automation. So whatever comes from the previous step, just put it here. This is the full response. What this code will do, it will go through that JSON, it will itemize it, create objects out of it, objects and keys and values, and then it will clean the the extra text before it and after it. So you will get something like this. So you can see all of those are dynamic objects you can now work with in Zapier. Once you have that, you create a document from template. This is a standard action in Google Docs application on Zapier, and it's a gruesome process, but you have to do it only once. So you just select Google Docs, create document from template, you go to configuration, and everything that you used the curly brackets for, you will see it here. So you'll see the whatever was between those two sets of curly brackets, you'll see it as the placeholder here, and you simply start getting the objects from the Code by Zapier step, because that's where we created items and objects out of it from the JSON, and you start placing them in their respective section of the CV. So for example, you can see here, professional summary, you can see here, I'm selecting the professional summary header, and so forth. You keep doing this across the whole CV. So you assign the right dynamic field to the right placeholder on your template, and that's it. You can test. When you test it, you will get a document. It will be a Google document. For me, I want to use PDFs because they're more stable when I use them in sending. So what you do is you do a find a file. And in that find file step, what you do is you look for the same Google Doc that you created out of a template. If you go to the configuration here, what you include is the same title that you assigned for the file in the previous step. You look for an exact match, and that's it. You only need to just define that this is a Google Doc. Okay. Why did I locate the file again? Now, one great thing out of Google Drive whenever you use the find file, it will return the same file as a Google Doc in multiple formats. So I can use it in Word, I can use it in PDF just by locating the file. So here I create it, here I recover it, and I can use it with whatever format that suits me. What I do after that is one more conversation with ChatGPT, and again, normal setup, but when we go to configuration, here what I'm doing is I'm giving it some details around the job we're talking about and everything else about me from some information I included in my CV. And here the ask is very simple. I want it to write based on my profile, based on the job details that I'm providing here. And again, this prompt will be provided to you. I want it to provide a message, a customized message to the company or the recruiter or whomever at the other end of things to send with my CV and information about this job. So I will end up with a customized CV and a customized message. The only thing I need to do is just spend a little of effort and apply. Okay, so now we have a message to the recruiter or the HR person. Now I create a record. This is in the second table. So the one, let me show it again. So this is the second table, which has only the ones that were deemed as apply, or the AI decided it's good to apply for these ones. So now I have it. I create a record there and I list everything. So let me just show you quickly. So here I again put the job ID, I put the provider URL, the additional tips. I include everything I need, and including the hiring team LinkedIn message. So this is a field. Let's go back to the table again, and you can find it here. So I didn't test it yet for this step, but I know it works. I used it somewhere else. So we've created the record. And after that, this is personal preference. You want to keep a record of all the optimized CVs you can. For me, I will delete it because already I've stored it in Airtable. So whenever I go to Airtable, it's already safely stored there. I don't need it in my Google Drive. And then I send myself a WhatsApp message telling me, hey, by the way, your CV is ready to apply based on the research. So this is nothing I trigger, right? So I trigger just the search, and what I get on WhatsApp is only a notification for each job worthwhile my application. So let's say out of 10, I get 1. That's good. I know that I have it here. I have a link even to go directly and apply from my mobile, but I wouldn't do that this way. So by this stage, we did everything. If you want to stop here, you're good to go. But I added one more thing, a cherry on the top, something to make it super powerful, because I don't want to stop here in the value I give you. I want to give you all the value I can offer. So the last automation is finding HR people in that organization. So even if we create that record for the case where we apply and there is no hiring team provided by the job poster, well, I want to be aware without going to LinkedIn about the top people in their HR organization that could help me land this job. And I do it through this automation. I'll be much faster here. Everything here, just take my word for it. It's all in the documentation. Just follow it. And the same concept works with Rapid API endpoints. And we have a couple of them here. So the first thing, I wait for the line to be created in the second table. So this is where, okay, we have something that we need to go after. The CV is ready, it's optimized. And I filter it by making sure that last modified is not existing yet, and then the company ID exists. And the reason I put this first one and the second one to avoid going into a loop. So once it's created, you have the created field, but the modified field is not there. Once you run this again, the modified field will be populated, so it will not run after that. So the first time this automation run, it will go successfully. If it goes in the loop because it triggers by a new record or an updated record, it will not happen. So don't stress about it. Just put it in a way that will protect your automation from going into loops. So we have a job detail and I have an optimized CV, but I want HR people in that organization. So here I'm using other endpoints from that same API. Let me show it to you quickly. So if you go back to this API, the real-time LinkedIn scraper API that we are looking at, I want to use other endpoint that will help me find recruitment people in that company, or HR people in that company, or headhunters in that company. So there's profile APIs, plenty of them, and then employee search. So we have many things we can use, and I used exactly those in my automation. So the first thing is I want to find people in a specific location. This API call is a precursor to a second one. Now, if you remember, when we moved the records that has apply, we did all the AI magic and we generated all the details and we created a field or a record in the second table. We have certain fields that we populated in that second table. One of them is the location from the job that we picked up from LinkedIn. Now, this is essential for us to know where the job is landed or probably planned to be. So we can look for people from HR there as an option. You can do it as a generic, but usually people within the same location from HR and the recruitment team are more concerned with that job. The second step I'm going to cover here is concerned, or when you use it, has to work with what they call a GeoID. So it's a number, it's a string that is a geographic location. It doesn't work with a descriptive location like Dubai or New York or whatever. So this is an endpoint where I get from the first table, and again in the document, all the tables you need to populate in the second table as well are defined. You get the URL from that endpoint, and I'll have the details again in the document. So just copy paste here and get the job location, and then API key and host, run it. What you will have is for this location. So for me, I want in that company people in HR in Dubai where I live. So you can do it for your location. I want to get that GeoID. So you go get that GeoID and then you run a code in Python. And in this code, and I'll share also, this code will be available for you. Everything here will be available for you. Is you're going to get multiple options for those GeoIDs as a response from the API call, and it will come as URL encoded. What this will do, it will URL decode the response, and it will return to me GeoIDs separated by comma. So it's comma separated GeoIDs, which is much better and easier to deal with. And then this is the second step where I need the GeoID. What I will do here is I will do use an endpoint to search for HR executives. And the same way, you have to go to that endpoint on Rapid API, put your parameters, get the URL. But essentially, this is the URL here. It's heavy because it has lots of details, and it's a get. And what you need to provide here is the company ID. So this is why we also take the company ID to the second table. You need the GeoIDs. So basically, I'm telling them, let's say Microsoft. I want to look for HR people in Microsoft in these locations. Get me those. And the rest of the URL is having keywords that will tell which people to search for, which employees to search for. And I'm putting people like, or things like recruitment, acquisition, talent acquisition. You can see it here. And once that is done, I update my record. So I'll have one field where I dump this information into. So if there's no hiring team, I'll just go there and see what I get out of this automation, this third and last automation, which is a cherry on the top. And I think I'll look through them, I'll see the top profiles, and then I'll decide if I want to send more messages to these people for that job, if I really care about it, which will increase my odds or your odds in that case. So if we go to the real-time LinkedIn scraper on Rapid API again, you will find that there's a section and one endpoint called employee search. So if we click at that, we can go to the parameters and you can see we need a company ID, and there are other aspects of the search. So I need a GeoID as well. It's comma separated, you can see here. And this is why we did the previous API call, just to get those comma separated ready to use in this API call that I just covered. You can cover the seniority level. And here it's giving you some documentation on what seniority level to cover and how. And then current titles, also the same applies, all comma separated. Whatever you write here, as usual, will populate in this URL that you need to pick up and take back to our automation. And then you end up with something similar to this. It's a get request. This is the URL with two dynamic fields. One is company ID and one is GeoID. And you search and you'll get some results about many people. And you know these are for a specific company, and you include them in the Airtable database. And after, which I realize is a really long video that is definitely packed with so many things to do to build this automation. Thank you for watching if you're still here, and I hope you build it, because you do it once, it's not easy, but this is an automation that you can use as a powerful tool to find jobs for yourself or loved ones today or in the future whenever you wish to do so. I hope you got the value I was hoping to deliver to you when I started this. It's long, it took me lots of time, and it took you, I'm sure, lots of watch time to get through it and probably some more time to build it. So thank you for all that effort. If you enjoyed the video, do not forget to hit the subscribe button, like, share it with someone into automation in general or someone really eager to find a job. This will get them the job that they're dreaming of. And with this, thank you for watching and goodbye.